Do you know what the oldest existing audio recording is? And do you know who recorded it? Most people don't, and they can't be blamed because history was only recently rewritten concerning this question. Unless you're driving while listening, I want you to look down at whatever device is playing this podcast. Now imagine it being whatever version existed 15, 20 years ago. Maybe it was an MP3 player or a CD player, and back it up another 10 years. Cassette Walkman, AM/FM radio. Now let's go ahead and push it back another 130 years or so. Now what do you picture? If it's a piece of paper covered in soot from an oil lamp, a boar's whisker, and a repurposed cone, well, and maybe you've already heard this story. Intended for mature, open-minded audiences only. If you are easily offended, we suggest you turn this wacky shit straight off. Destination unknown as we pulling forth and gas. It'd be a better song to close with.
Couldn't you record your own version and use it, though? I mean, like, isn't that the way it works?
No, but it has to be 25 years old in order to do a cover without... actually, it's probably close.
Though, is that I hear podcasts all the time that are using music in it that I know damn well they don't have the fucking rights to use. So how do they get away with it? How do they do it?
We got away with it.
Within a certain... There's a time restraint on it?
I'm talking full songs.
Yeah, there's
that's what I'm saying is that I know that they don't have rights and they use them all the time. I hear it all the time.
They're just getting away with it the way that anyone that's doing something illegally and doesn't get caught gets away with it. It's like no one knows. Now, if it's a bigger podcast, but not necessarily like Kevin Smith big, it's surprising that they're getting away with it as much on that level because there are bots that can go out there and just look for waveforms. It's interesting that organically came up because we'll be talking about waveforms at length in my soup de jour tonight. But the only reason, we used to play music all the time and we just didn't worry about it. And we never got any trouble for it. But there are stricter standards now, and if you want to get in on like Spotify, ironically,
so many people have podcasts.
Yeah, and there are better bots out there that can find the songs. And I had to pay for all those things are canceling now that radar station's going away. But I had to pay for BMI and ASCAP. I never did get approached by. I think it's CSAC is the third big one. But
senior CSAC before
Ron. CSAC, yeah, my CSAC is all withered away. But if you're paying for all that, you can get away with certain things. But even then, there are different rules for podcasts because they're forever. Like there are things like it's different from a radio station broadcasting something in a one-time thing than it is a podcast because that's you're basically giving away an MP3 of that song. Now, where Lyle, you mentioned the time limit thing. That's been the thought for a while, but that's not true, actually. I don't know where that came from. I think it probably came from somewhere between like fair use and just people not really worrying about when 5 seconds of their song. But, we have evidence that Prince went after everybody, basically, that played even 2 seconds of his music or sampled half a second of a song. But so that doesn't excuse it. The only way you can get around that is if it's genuinely fair use. And it's kind of a tricky and interesting law chapter or division, shall we say, genre, because there are of course, there are lawyers that specifically are trained for this kind of law. It's like fair use law. Basically, if I brought up the newest Ghost album, and I was talking about, you got to hear this song, and as long as we're talking about it and it comes up in like a story and we're referencing it, most of the time that's going to be considered fair use, and I could play a little snippet of it, but never just sitting back and playing the entire song.
If you're talking over it and like reviewing it and kind of critiquing it and stuff like that, is that okay?
I think I think even if you're not talking over it, I think if you're just talking about the song, that's fair use. Like if you're doing a story or you're doing a critique or you're doing a review about a thing, typically playing snippets of that is going to be allowed. I think if you played the whole song, you'd be better off talking over the whole thing. But if you're going to talk about, like, you got to hear this new song and then I play the entire song, that's not likely to fall under fair use because you're not using it as... but if I said, you got to hear, Radiohead's Creep was so clearly inspired or ripped off, the Hollies, Air That I Breathe or whatever, you would be able to get away with playing those songs back to back in comparison because it's part of that discussion.
I think you just play How Bizarre every time and be like, How Bizarre, this song was written in 1997, and then we just move the fuck on.
It's like, every time I hear it, there's one more line that I'd like to analyze.
Well,
Destination Unknown, what does it mean?
The thing I was kind of getting at too was like for like when you're streaming, you could use like alerts, right? So somebody donates, they use alerts. So like say it's Limp Bizkit, right? So it's like, what you gonna do now? You use those clips.
Sing it.
Those little clips.
Break some shit, Lyle. Come on.
I'm gonna break some shit. Yeah. So, but you use those clips. I mean, they're. It's obviously Limp Bizkit, but you could use those as long as they're small and.
Well, I would say that's probably more sampling. About Twitch's guidelines than the law. If someone came after them and said, like if someone from Limp Bizkit's label said you can't use that, they'd have to stop. Because whether Twitch allows it or not, that's not, they don't control those rights.
Well, that's the thing. If you're listening to that's not copyrighted music, they'll censor your entire VOD, which is
you're saying they won't allow.
They won't allow it if you listen to music.
Yeah.
Say if you're just playing like World of Warcraft and you're listening to like Iron Maiden, like every Iron Maiden song ever done, you just have it in the background.
Yeah.
They will mute your VOD.
Yeah, for sure.
It's copyrighted.
Don't you think it's fucking time to work something else out for this? Like, I think if you're not making $1 billion, I mean that's an exaggeration, but if you're not minting money off of this, I think that when we're creating content, we should be able to talk about music or play a small clip of it or whatever. Like, who gives a shit? I mean, I don't know. I guess it's a different story if your whole thing is selling this product that isn't yours. But if I don't know, maybe I'm wrong.
Well,
just feels like there's a better way.
A lot of the time, it's lawyers at the top of large corporations that are at the bottom of this.
Yeah. Well, the internet got real fucked, dude, when Napster came out and fucked everything over. If you think about it, if you just reflect on the last 30 years of music. And how people made music and how they're making it now. I mean, now everything's digital. I mean, that's where they're going to make their money. It's not making cassette tapes or vinyl. Or doing shows anymore. It's digital now. Everything is completely digital. So
I still think that most artists make the majority of their money from touring.
For sure. But
the artists do, yeah.
Huge. And I was going to ask you, say if you're a professional, Chris, and this is your job, you toured with Nirvana and you're fucking rocking it, and you hang out with Dave Grohl, right? So you're a professional fucking musician, right?
No, I'm listening.
You're making billions of fucking dollars off your brand, right?
Yeah.
What if you had a 20-second riff, like say it's something like Nirvana's "Smells Like Teen Spirit"? That well, if somebody like on YouTube is making a tutorial on like how to do stuff, and he's making money off of your music, the shit that you
get it. I totally get it. But if it's we're not making any money.
Oh, not at all.
You know what I mean? Like,
but I'm saying
a line.
Yeah.
But like, I think if you can prove that you're not making more than $10,000 a year on a passion project or something like that, maybe the law should be a little looser. I don't know.
I would say if you can prove that you're not contributing to any loss of income by that person, because it's like if this person's making like millions of dollars a year off this stuff and you're using like one small section of one song to do something and you're making some money, but that's not taking away from what they're making. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's how I feel. Like, I feel like that there should be a way to do that. That's a little less like, just it feels weird.
Well, if we were all just nice to each other. And
Jesus Christ! When Bridget and I were we put up our announcement that we're having a fucking kid, and I wanted to put it's a 40-second video of us at a pinball machine queuing up 3 players. Stupid, but adorable. And I wanted to use a little song, just like the fucking intro to one of my favorite deep cuts on a Bayside record. And it wouldn't let me post it to Facebook because it had 30 seconds of music on it. Like,
even with shitty music, they won't let you get away with it, huh?
You don't. How dare you?
Oh,
Wait.
If you, I even hate to even say it, but like Limp Bizkit, like their first album,
Just keep coming back to the LB, baby.
Well, I saw somebody was in a concert on Instagram. A friend of mine was at his concert, and he's still touring. But like, if you listen to the first album, literally rip off, songs from everybody else. It's just like, I don't know. It just blows my mind.
Something similar in the same regard happened to me recently. So, like, my bank offers you the ability to customize your debit card with any picture you want.
Yeah.
Had to be copyright free.
Dude, the list of things that you can't put on it is fucking insane. Like, it cannot be. So anything that references anything that could be copyrighted or IP, you can't do. So it has to be a picture that you take, right? Okay, great. But it can't be obviously any filters from an app.
What?
Like, it can't have like any obvious like Snapchat or Instagram filters on it.
No puppy dog
It can't
knows.
be of anything construed to be of death or, you know what I mean? There's all these subject matters that are forbidden. And I'm just like, oh my God, what picture can I actually use?
Yeah.
It's my picture, and I can't even use any of these because you're going to think that it's some other thing that it's really not. You know what I mean?
That
That's
is
funny.
stupid.
Should just be like
It was crazy.
middle finger or something. Just like fuck
Yeah,
you.
it's like, can it go with my dick? I was like, yeah, as long as you don't have a puppy
That
dog
would not
nose
be
on it.
approved.
You just got to reach the end of the card, Ron.
Not
As long as
approved,
it's
sir.
not copyrighted.
Well, who knows? The world is constantly changing, and we have new, relatively updated liquor laws, certainly updated pot laws, and with TV and copyright, and everything is different now than it was even 10 years ago, and way different than it was 20 years ago. So we probably will see some updated laws. Now, I know, like you mentioned streamers, I don't know what it's like on Twitch, but with YouTube, they've started to do this thing where, if you get your videos monetized and you are using copyrighted materials in there in any way, they won't necessarily demonetize it. They'll just send that money to the appropriate, well, this is what they say anyway, they'll send that money to the appropriate licensee, whether that's ASCAP, BMI, Universal Studios, whatever you're using. If it's passing from, fair use into this is more of a commercial use of this particular thing, then they'll allow it, but that money will go. Again, allegedly, I don't trust it, but if it worked on
You just
that
start
level,
jacking your revenue stream.
if it worked on that level, I think it's kind of an interesting fix to that. Like Chris said, we're not making money off this podcast. Well, what if we use, a song snippet of Beck, and we were somehow monetizing something from this podcast, just in terms of how you get it. Taking a snippet off of, just taking that chunk of money and sending it to Beck sounds great, but we're not making any money off it. So there probably will be some change in the fair use laws in the not too distant future. God knows we're due for some updates in it, but I think ultimately it's just easier to do a one size fits all blanket law.
I made a lightning, like a photographic video of just lightning, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I used and it was a long time ago. Fuck, it was like 10, 12 years ago. And I used AC/DC's song, Thunderstruck.
Yeah.
And that's what it did. It monetized it as they gave the money to AC/DC.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. I mean, that's kind of win-win, right? Like you got to use the song, it worked well with your video, and AC/DC hopefully got a little, 25 cents from the.
That's exactly the solution I'd like for, personal use. A podcast is a little different because, the goal, the dream, I guess, someday is to actually make some money from doing this, and getting more serious about it because we can justify spending the time.
Yeah, we do make a little money on patreon.com/tales from the
Oh my
Space
God,
Pod.
yes.
Good time to plug that. We do make a little money, but yeah, so you can see how it's possible. And you see all these other knuckleheads that are making a lot of money with their podcasts. Like, well, they can do it. But, I'm thankful that anybody listens to this shit show. And if we did get to some level where it was just monetized, I would have zero problem with someone saying, oh, you used Beck's Loser in that last episode. We're going to take 75% of your revenue from that to pay for that one song. Fine. I won't use Loser next time, and we'll get 100% of the revenue. Or we have to absolutely play, 1999 from Prince. And a little bit off the top again. Yeah, good solution, but still convoluted. And ultimately, it comes down to accountability, and I just don't trust anybody. I don't trust any money that I'm not seeing exchanged right in front of my face that Beck or even DGC or whatever label he was on at the time of that release is getting a dime of that money. And that's why I was so angry with having to sign up for ASCAP and BMI. And by the way, I'm on, I can't remember which one I'm on. I think it's BMI. So whenever I download my own shit and I use it, whenever I use my own music, there are only 3 albums that I have licensed under BMI. But if I use that, I get dinged. There are a couple of albums of mine that I can't use in my Facebook advertisements and my own YouTube clips. There's no way around that. Even though I'm 100% the person that owns that music. It's licensed and registered as copyrighted music, and you can't fucking use it without getting dinged. It is weird. It's kind of interesting and cool, and you can see, where people have used your music or tried to use it. But other than YouTube, I don't know if anyone even allows it, because Facebook just straight up won't allow it. They'll just say, you have the option of not having any audio in this clip or uploading something that you didn't steal. As where YouTube, like Lyle said, will often just put an ad on it, and any revenue that comes out of that goes to the licensee. Anywho, tonight, again, this was kind of like serendipitous as to where we're headed, because you guys didn't know what I was going to talk about tonight, but we are talking about the earliest known audio recordings in humankind. And I think this is a fascinating story, and it's only recently updated. Like, history was recently changed, completely rewritten in terms of the earliest audio recordings, and I'll be playing some of these haunting and fascinating clips for you all tonight. But before we get that, any news you guys want to cover?
I got a story. I had something, I think last time we recorded, we were talking about how they had found a grave site under a apartment complex in Florida.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
So the day after we did that, I saw a fucking another story pop up. I was like, this is unbelievable. Why does this keep happening? So, excuse me, I'm going to read the headline here in just a few choice snippets of what I've read from the story here. Headline is, a lost cemetery containing the remains of 145 people has been discovered on the campus of a Tampa high school.
High school.
So here's some quotes from the story. Last month, our district received information from a citizen about a possible cemetery on the property of King High School. Within days, our district hired a team of geophysical technicians from GeoView to begin mapping and scanning 2 areas on the campus. I initially saved a screenshot of this to send you guys, but I failed to attach it. So I'm just going to describe what it looks like. It's an overhead view of the school. And right outside of one of the main buildings, we're in a park area with trees, is 145 little graves.
Oh, wow.
I mean, this is where kids are all the time. Let's see. Here's some more interesting shit about this. Almost all of the burials in this area were African Americans. The land containing the cemetery was bought in 1959 and built over. They did not move the graves. The first area that was scanned is on the south edge of the King High School campus. This is where the technicians found clear evidence of burials. Ground-penetrating radar found approximately 145 coffins buried 3 to 5 feet deep. 3 to 5 feet
pretty shallow. Shallow.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy? I just think it's nuts.
Yeah, it is nuts, but I guess we're going to discover this more and more as our radar and sonar technology gets better and better, and we start looking into things, right?
Yeah.
Like with this entire, there's that joke that, man, America's been suffering a lot lately. It's almost as if this entire country were built on some ancient Indian burial ground. And it's like, one way or another, it kind of is. The entire thing is sort of built on graveyards, but is it just common practice to build over these known graveyards?
I don't know.
I hate to say it, but it reminds me of that Creed song. There's a Creed song.
Oh, you're bringing up all the
thank God
good
it wasn't
stuff.
Limp Bizkit again. That reminds me of this Limp Bizkit song I heard
Nookie.
once.
No. Yeah, it's.
I do it all for the bodies. Leave them. I leave them.
I can't remember the song, but it's hilarious. It's because like when you bury somebody, you go like 8 feet. You go 9 feet. What is it?
10
feet, I
feet.
was-
6 to 10, yeah.
Yeah, and he goes like one foot over or something in his Creed song.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel weird about it, and I don't know why I feel weird. They're underground. They're under dirt. But it's just disrespectful, right? Or is it? Do we care? I feel like we should care.
Curious. Well, I'm curious on like the time era, like if they actually went to that practice of burying him 6 foot, because
Well,
I
they're
can
probably
imagine.
slaves, right? I mean, it sounds like the timeline might be former slaves.
Would you keep to the 6 foot rule, or would you just like, we'll go 2 feet? You know, when Chris mentioned that, all I could think about is kids playing out in the fucking dirt with shovels and pulling out bones.
Look, I found another skull-shaped rock.
Right?
Yeah. That's a roughin', but I feel like this is, I think, with these stories getting headlines, I think that we're going to start seeing more and more people looking down, right? Like, how hard could it be to get some sonar equipment and go looking what's under your shit?
Yeah, I think it's getting easier to do those scans, too.
Yeah. We used to go looking for coins on the beach. Now we're looking to see who has the most graves under their high school or apartment complex. This is going to be bragging rights, Ross. Hey. Mm-hmm. But what do you do? Like, at some point, somebody's going to have to move a thing, right? Like, I guess they're just going to say, well, too bad, so sad. At least you're near kids having fun and playing. I don't know. I don't know how you deal with it on either side, but weird stories, and they make me feel weird. I don't like the thought of people being buried underneath buildings, which, again, is kind of weird because they're already buried, but they're only a few feet away from sunshine and bird shit and grass or whatever, or visitors, people that can walk by and see that you existed. That seems like way better of a way to go than parking lot above you. That's just that's grim.
I agree.
Grim
It's very strange to think. It's just weird.
Yeah,
but that's why these I don't know, intrigue me so much, I guess.
Yeah. First couple of many, I'm sure. These stories will keep on coming out. Anybody else got anything?
I thought this was a little hilarious. You know, like farmers for years have used like scarecrows in their fields to scare away like animals trying to get their stuff across. Anyway, so in India, they have a problem with monkeys. Okay. So, like, the monkeys will go and they'll, like, kind of fuck up all their fruit and shit like that. So, like, what they do is they take dogs and they camouflage them up to look like little lions. So they'll go around and scare off the monkeys so they'll not fuck up their fruit.
To look like little lions. Did you send
adorable.
this on your text?
Yeah, it was Facebook, I think.
Like little tigers.
Little tigers.
Little tiger stripes.
Cute.
That's actually kind of effective. Is it working?
Yeah, apparently.
Well, wouldn't a monkey be afraid of a dog running after it? I guess the dogs aren't running after it is probably the point. they just look out and see a bunch of
The
tigers.
camouflage. Yeah. So it freaks them out, so they take off.
Well.
Monkeys are pretty smart, so they
I
figure
feel like they'd figure them shits out. I think it's only a matter of time before we have a GIF making its rounds on Facebook of a monkey riding one of these dog tigers, slapping its ass.
Tiger.
I don't a tiger.
Yeah, the other story I had,
Well,
it was false. False shit.
Oh, I'm glad you figured it out, though. I hate it when I bring a false story. I hate it.
Well, I mean, it's whatever.
It's so easy to do these days.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Well, the other picture that I showed you guys, it was
I want to know the story here.
wearing VR.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fake story, but like it's supposed to be Russian farmers have been like hooking all these cows up with fucking VR.
Oh, it's fake. I saw that too.
Yeah, and they're like, I mean, it's fake, obviously, but they were trying to like they could, obviously control the environment the way the cows were to produce more milk. Yeah.
So they were like they could be in like a stall somewhere, but what they're seeing is some open, happy, sunny pasture. It's depressing. That's a matrix ass way to get your milk.
It's the Mootrix.
Knew there was something in there. Well played.
I don't know. I think you're really milking that, gentleman.
Yeah.
Oh,
you guys
boy.
are utterly ridiculous with
I think
this
that's our
shit.
next T-shirt, the Mootrix.
The Mootrix. Yeah. Well, didn't they?
Awesome
They
with
did
the cow
that.
at the VR.
Well, they did that scene. They did that Matrix type scene in Kung Pao, where
that's true,
the
that's true,
cow's
huh?
like doing that slow motion sideways flip, shooting its tit milk.
It's slow motion milk udder stuff. Yeah.
Mootrix.
So I saw a story that I thought was kind of cute.
You're still laughing about Mootrix.
Yeah,
Well, Mootrix plus that photo. Yeah, that's.
I'm not normally that quick on my feet. That was pretty good.
It was good. Yeah.
I saw a story today that I thought was kind of cute. There was a family in Mexico, and they have a cat, and I if I remember correctly, his name was Pixie, and he's just like the family cat, and sometimes he'd go off, and he'd maybe be gone for a couple days, maybe longer sometimes, and they were like, oh, he's just out having adventures. He always came back eventually, until one day he came back and he had a new collar on. And they were like, "What the fuck is this collar? I wonder if he's been hanging out at somebody else's house, maybe." And so they put
Living
a
two
note.
lives.
They tucked a note into his collar and said, "Hi,
Listen, bitch.
my name's Pixie, and I live with this family here at this address." And they sent him off with a little note tucked to his collar. And sure enough, he came back with another note that said, "Hi, I also live with this family here, and when I'm here, my name is Horace."
That's amazing.
That's
And
great.
so he totally been living with two different families as two different named cats.
Huh.
Yeah. So they basically
they all meet?
I don't know. I can't remember if they met or not, but I think that it said that he just kind of like
The
lives
cat
with both
forbids it.
families, and they're all cool with it.
The cat's like, these families must never meet. One can never know about the other me.
Yeah.
Hilarious. Huh. A charming story. Very unlikely. Not a homing, but a carrier cat,
Carrier cat. Yeah.
so to speak. Send a Pixie.
Not a cat carrier, but a
Why
carrier
did you buy
cat.
our cat a new collar? Yeah, that's funny. I wonder why they felt the need to change collars.
I wonder if maybe he didn't have a collar originally or something.
Oh, yeah. He just came
Possible.
back. Not with a
Yeah.
different colored one, but one altogether.
Whoa, what's this going on here?
Mm-hmm. I'll just take that to my other family. See you in 3 days, meow. Interesting. Anybody else before we get moving on to my fascinating soup day hour?
Do it.
Well, up until 2008, we thought we knew most of what we were going to learn about the early recordings because it was thought that the very first recorded audio came from Thomas Edison in 1888. He invented the phonograph. There were several early recordings. One of them, I think the one that was most often cited as the first human voice recording ever was Edison doing a Mary Had a Little Lamb. Not singing it, just saying it into the horn. That
Was that on the wax cylinders?
Yeah, it was those. It was before it was records. It was the little wax cylinders. Sometimes they're wax. Sometimes they were tin foil. The earlier ones were tin foil. But this was the first version of recording that you could etch sound into and then play it back. So it was basically just a little drum that spun the cylinders around on it, had a needle that went into it when it was soft, sometimes heated up, but usually just soft. And then a different needle would go over it after you had carved in the sound as you talked into the little horns, basically like talking into what we think of the Victrola, those cone-shaped speakers. It was also the microphone. You just talked into it when you were recording, and then the sound came out of it when you were playing it back. That original recording of Mary Had a Little Lamb seems to be lost to time because a lot of these earlier tin cylinders they're too far gone. You can't play. They still have a lot of them, but they're just useless artifacts. So from like 1877 all the way to 1887, what they referred to as the silent decade, because we knew that people were making recordings. but we can't play them. We can't hear them. They fall apart when we try, or they're half apart just sitting on a shelf somewhere. So that is the silent decade. Now, that Mary Had a Little Lamb, like I said, I found a couple of clips of Edison doing Mary Had a Little Lamb, but from what I gather, that seems to be something that he did years later on the anniversary of the announcement of the phonograph, which was a pretty big deal, as you can imagine. But it seems like now the earliest Edison recording that we can actually play is this gorgeous and haunting recording of Handel's Israel and Egypt, which featured a 4,000-person chorus. Can you imagine seeing that, just hearing that in person? But 4,000 people all together singing Handel's Israel and Egypt, and Edison placed a phonograph about 100 yards away. So take a listen. This was thought to be the earliest recording in humankind, and it sounds like Entering Heaven.
That's fucking incredible.
Isn't that amazing? 4,000. That's 4,000 voices singing together.
That would not be out of place on a Flaming Lips or a King Gizzard record.
Yeah, and since this is going back to copyrights, this is well before, what is that? I think anything recorded or written or otherwise created before 1927, you can do whatever you want with. It's always going to be public domain. Everything after that, even if it's within the 75-year rule or 25-year rule, whatever way you're approaching the usage of that, is up for debate, because people can renew those rights. But if they don't, the thing is, if no one renews those rights, then it goes into public domain. And sometimes things come out of public domain. Like for a long time, or several years anyway, the reason you would see It's a Wonderful Life on like every network, like around the clock in December, was it temporarily in the public domain, and then somehow it ended up getting renewed and restored, and so now you see it. I think ABC bought it back, and you only get one viewing of it per year on network TV. So sometimes things do come back. Anyway, yeah. So 4,000 people singing in front of a phonograph machine 100 yards away. And it was pretty well known that along with catching audio into tinfoil and wax cylinders for recording and playback, that Edison was also using a technique that etched sound waves into heavy pieces of paper that were smoked or dusted with lamp oil soot.
Holy shit, man.
Yeah, this was done on a machine called the phonautograph. And these weren't meant to be played back. They're pretty fragile things, but what they did was allow Edison to look at the actual waveforms and the sound files in higher contrast and better visibility than you would get looking at one of the wax cylinders. In other words, it was solely to study the actual appearance and behavior of the sound wave itself. And a whole pile of these were found in the library with the rest of Edison's earliest recordings and his invention notes and writings. And this comes into play in a major way in a bit, but by all accounts, the very first audio recording that Edison made was Mary Had a Little Lamb. But the earliest phonograph recordings that were recorded in those very early days, again, were no longer playable. So they have them in an archive somewhere, but you can't even look at them without them falling apart. So they're basically just these interesting silent artifacts. Artifacts of recordings that go back quite a bit further than Edison's so-called earliest recordings. The timeline is a little confusing here, but basically we're sticking to that silent decade between 1877 and 1887. But since they couldn't play them, we couldn't confirm that many of these canisters or sheets, some of them were just on sheets of paper, like I said, were even open-air recordings at all. They could have been anything else that were just set alongside of these other cylinders, because there was a lot of experimentation going on in these early days. And a group of researchers called First Sounds had been looking into these early recordings and with specific interest into that silent decade. And they made some amazing discoveries. Somebody reached out to them from Paris, and apparently there was an inventor over there doing his own experiments with the phonautograph using the lamp oil soot etching technique. And that was Edward Leon Scott de Martinville, who I'm going to henceforth refer to as Leon Scott for obvious reasons.
Please. Let's call him Frank.
Frankie boy. Now, after doing some major research, they found themselves with a huge collection of Scott's experiments, and a short pile of the phonographs sheets, or phonograms as they were called, in various states of aging. And they were only seeing these JPEGs at first in pretty low res quality, so they couldn't really tell what they were looking at. They couldn't even really discern whether they were seeing waveforms or some other experimentation, as I mentioned. They were going through his notes and learning more about the man and these recordings through that, and they found someone to translate all of them, and they found that Scott had written down some pretty interesting clues as to what he was up to, and they realized that phonographs, that no matter how many times I wrote it or said it in researching, that word just does not flow off my tongue. Phonograph.
It's a tough word.
Yeah. The phonograms in his collection were significantly older than the ones that they had discovered in Edison's collection by almost a decade. And Leon Scott, he was no Thomas Edison. He designed his own versions of the phonograph. They thought at first that he may have even invented it, but they had no proof of that. But Scott's interest in audio was more of a fascination with the relatively new idea of photography. And the first known photograph, by most people's standards, is the 1826 photo from Joseph, I believe you pronounce it Niepce, Joseph Niepce, window in France. Now, he just took I believe it was like an 8-hour exposure photograph out his window. There was a lot of people think the first photograph known to mankind was another picture that looked like it was out a window and overlooking a town. I can't remember who took that photo. And then there's just like one dude down there getting his shoes shined. That is thought to be the first photograph of a human being. And there's an interesting story behind that, because that's another one. Now, it wasn't an 8-hour exposure, but it was a very slow process to develop this one exposure. And it's kind of an eerie photo when you look at that one, because it's a completely empty city, except this one dude who's like standing still looking down at his feet while his shoes are getting shined. But what happened was that it was actually a busy street scene with other people walking up and down the sidewalk and driving up and down the roads. But because the exposure was so slow, it didn't pick up any of the movement. So it's just like a completely empty city, except for the dude that was holding still for like the 10 minutes or so, 5 or 10 minutes or so that it took to expose that photo. Really interesting.
I was going to say, you can still use that trick today if you're like at a monument or something like that. I mean, you're set up on a tripod, and if you set your exposure for that with like an ND filter, you could actually do that.
Yeah, you can do some pretty cool shit with that.
New camera.
Yeah. Now, there was an older photo taken the previous year, and I think it was the same photographer. I think that was Niepce's as well. But that was more of an engraving process. It was a replica of, it was a photograph, but by most measures, people regard this as the first known photograph. And it wouldn't really take off as a thing for many years later, photography. But when it did, it really captured Leon Scott's imagination, and he began to think about if you could do to audio what photography did to sight. And that's kind of how he was thinking about it. He wasn't really thinking about preservation in terms of like capturing, but some sort of language that you could build around the waveform or the actual visual cues that sound produces. And his theory was that if you studied these sound forms, these waveforms long enough, you could learn them the same way that you would learn any other written language. And that we could, I guess, someday actually interpret what was being said or sung simply by reading the sound waves. I don't think we ever quite got that far into it. But I can tell you this, anyone who's done audio work, editing, you do learn something from the waveforms if you see enough of them. I'm recording this podcast right now in GarageBand, and when I go back to edit things later, it's pretty easy to look for, dead spots. I've gotten pretty good at picking up on my ums before I talk. I don't get in there and do too many nitpicky edits, but a lot of times there'd be a perfectly good point that would be much stronger if you took out an or a little silence where you're looking at your phone to get confirmation on your, those kinds of things, little verbal tics. And lip smacking sounds, you can get to where you know exactly what those waveforms are. So he's not wrong on some level. You can actually read it and know what you're looking at to some degree. But, in terms of looking at a waveform and being able to decipher what somebody is saying, I think that's impossible, probably for a lot of reasons. Anywho, Scott was doing these types of experiments as early as 1854, so they were clearly the earliest known examples of these types of recordings, quote unquote. Again, because true recordings were designed to be played back and able to be played back. But in the mid-2000s, First Sounds was beginning to have some real headway working with some cutting-edge software development in terms of lifting sound off of otherwise unplayable artifacts. A part of this inspiration was to try to retrieve some information from the grooves on some of these early unplayable and deteriorated tins and wax drums, but they found their way to developing what they later named the virtual stylus. And this was software that could actually look at and identify and transcode, if you will, audio forms and waveforms that had been written out in an analog source. In other words, holy shit, let's see if we can play some of these earlier etchings and actually get some sound. All we need was one of these things to sing, and we've changed history. So they actually flew some of their crew to Paris to get their paws on the original phonographs, phonograms, to be technical, and they got the highest quality scans they could possibly get, along with digging through any of the notes and the books that Leon Scott had written, which there's quite a bit in this collection, all concerning the experiments. And while they were digging around, they discovered a few patents that Scott had successfully filed in the mid-1800s, and both of them were audio devices, but one of them was, in fact, the phonograph. And this is interesting because Edison, as mentioned earlier, was doing his own experiments with that device leading up to his invention of the phonograph. And when Edison was getting worldwide acclaim for inventing the phonograph, Leon Scott was, throwing a temper tantrum, understandably. And, he actually sat and wrote a type of memoir explaining how it's essentially impossible for Edison to have gotten to that invention without completely hijacking Scott's own research and work, and even using Scott's own patented machine. So nobody really paid attention to that noise, and Edison got all that credit. But even Edison didn't spend that much time tinkering with audio after that invention. He was more interested in electricity and light bulb technology at that point, and moved on to other things like electrocuting elephants in the middle of the streets. Look it up, folks. Actually did that. He was a bastard. But when First Sounds made it to Paris, they got their hands on those early phonographs. All those original ones that they'd pictured were confirmed to be from 1860, 28 years before Edison's cylinder wax recordings, and 17 years before Edison announced his invention, the phonograph, which again got them pretty excited because all they needed to capture was one interpretable waveform in their software to completely change history. But they'd already had some tremendous success with that software using phonographs that Edison had in his collection. The first of which were just bits of noise here and there. And I'm going to play one, actually, just so you can see how this evolution transpired, because this clip was huge. Now, you're not going to hear much. It's going to sound like some kid making fart noises into a microphone 150 years ago. And maybe it was. But I'm going to play it, and I'll tell you what their theory of what you're hearing is. One theory was they were doing like vocal warm-ups just to test out the machine. Me, 1, 2, 3, you're fucking around. It was probably more likely that this was an experiment as opposed to a warm-up, like they were just seeing what exaggerated sounds would look like on that waveform. If the entire point of this exercise was to look at the audio, at the point that thing was made, Edison already had invented his phonograph. I believe it was all tinfoil phonographs at that point. So he could record something for playback. And he had all sorts of things that he was recording for playback. But he was also working on these phonographs. What he was doing with those was simply studying sound, just like Leon Scott was. So he probably was just playing around with vocal inflections and just, fucking around into a microphone like you do and just seeing what it does as it's scribbling out the waveform onto your smoked piece of paper. Which is like you got to marvel at how unbelievably antiquated this technology is. It's a piece of paper with soot on it that you're running under a needle. I don't know how anyone ever discovered this. I couldn't get far enough into the past to guess that anyone would guess how they figured it, because these needles, the original needles for the phonomegraph machines, were boar's whiskers. But those were too fine. They were rigid enough to cut through the soot, but they were too fine to make a easy-to-read mark. So they actually tied a tiny feather to the bottom of the boar's needle. So you had a boar's needle tied to or boar's whisker, I should say, tied to a feather going into a horn and scribbling into soot. This was how we got our way to fucking turntables. It's insane. In just a few short years, by the way. But anyway, so when you hear something like that, it's like, well, big deal. But it really was, because technically this was the first modern hearing of something recorded in that previously thought to be silent decade. And what they think is happening there is that it's probably an assistant while, making that noise while Edison is cranking up the thing. There's a couple different versions of this. One of them had like a sliding sled, and one of them was a hand-cranked object. But both of them could be done with just one person. History was about to change completely for Scott and Edison in the mid-2000s, because after processing all of these recordings, or the phonograms, they came across one that was particularly interesting, and it happened to be the oldest one. These were all dated. It was very well categorized and cataloged by Leon Scott. So they gave this a play, and this is what they heard.
What the fuck was that?
Again, not easy to hear. First of all, obviously, because it's degraded, and it's a digital rendering of something that was done analog 150 years ago, but also because it's in French. But if you speak French, it was this jumped out at you a bit quicker, I suppose. Definitely the sound of a woman singing a line from a very well-known French folk song, Ah, Clair de la Lune. This was now known as the oldest recorded human voice ever. And this just happened in 2008. So First Sounds was going to hold a press conference about this major fucking news, but somehow the New York Times got wind of it, and they didn't even need to do that press conference because the entire world was captivated by that. And that one clip, as you can imagine, made its rounds everywhere. And one of the many people who saw it was Leon Scott's great-grandson, who promptly reached out to First Sounds and said, there's a whole other collection over here in Paris that I know about that you guys haven't looked at yet. And so after making a few phone calls, First Sounds was once again on a plane back to Paris. And this time they discovered 28 previously unknown phonograms, along with an entire year's worth of research and notation. But when they looked at it, they thought it was going to be unreadable because they were just in terrible condition. They weren't consistent. Now remember, Scott wasn't making recordings. He was making waveforms to study for people to read back, or for his own amusement and experimentation. So you would get the occasional needle skipping off the paper, or maybe he was cranking faster and then slower, and then it was all over the place. And so he made this pretty challenging to decode, and these were his earliest experiments. So he was particularly clumsy during that time. They were a mess, and he wasn't really a technically savvy kind of guy. Definitely wasn't a scientific-minded kind of guy. So First Sounds had all this to deal with, but they found an incredibly genius technique within that software that I won't even attempt to explain. But essentially, to simplify it, I guess, they just used very specific formulas for following the waveforms and comparing them to other waveforms that are adjacent to those waveforms, and essentially they just started filling in the blanks, but that wasn't enough because they still had sort of like doubling up fuzzy and sort of blurry sound waves, if that makes sense. So they had to take those and then thin it down and just optically basically make it more crisp, then print those out, then scan them, and then read them. And once they did that, they found that they were picking up entire chunks of recognizable sound and dialogue. And it wasn't perfect, but it was a means to pick up some parts of the audio from these incredibly old and delicate tracings. And one of those examples using that technique was so flawless that it actually captured an entire opening monologue from a well-known play. And give this a little listen, and I'll tell you why this is doubly interesting. Now again, I realize what everyone is hearing is, but there is language here, and it's been proven. This one was really interesting because, again, they recognized that it was from a well-known play. But what made it doubly interesting is that Leon Scott himself left a note on this particular recording that said, "I was wrong. It should have been umane forme and not forme umana." In other words, he was admitting that he recited those words incorrectly. So give it one more listen, knowing that, because this was proof, in other words, that this was the inventor himself in his own voice. So he got the words wrong and made a note that, oops, fucked that one up, which I find fascinating. So we now had the voice of the man himself on a recording. So this was just news on top of big news. And we got this a century and a half later using technology that would surely seem like science fiction or even magic to Leon Scott, grabbed from a piece of paper covered in fucking ash that was never even designed to be played back by anything ever. But they also made another interesting discovery about that time, and that was that many of these had two simultaneous sound waves coming through. In most cases, there were actually two separate grams that were recorded at the same time with separate inputs. One of those would be the vocal input, and the other one was a tone of a tuning fork. And this confused them at first, but the more they dug through his notes, they realized that what Scott was doing, he was using specific tones as a type of calibration. You know, like knowing that the manual operation of these devices, you know, first the sliding sled and later the hand crank drum variety, these were fraught with uneven and inconsistent behaviorisms. The reason that he was simultaneously recording the tuning fork with the other vocal inputs was so that you could use the steady tone of the tuning fork as a visual cue to keep things locked in calibration. Initially, that would have been solely a visual cue in reading the wave as a language, but it was a huge discovery by First Sounds because they were able to use that tone as a way of locking in the tempo and the pitch of that recording. Unfortunately, Leon thought to make a note of which pitch and at what frequency the tuning fork for each recording was in. And he left it on each phononogram. So the First Sounds researchers now realized they had been playing everything too fast. Now here's a clip of the stabilization process, and you'll hear a little bit of the voice of David Giovanni from First Sounds talking here. And I'm going to leave that in because it explains the difference.
Technologies, we can stabilize the voice recording by stretching or squishing the tuning fork track to compensate for the variations in cranking speed. After time correction, the tuning fork track goes from this to this.
So you see what's happening there. In that first clip, you can hear how sporadic the cranking is. Like that, every time it goes, you can picture him just cranking the wheel around because it's not steady. So all they did was they corrected the steadiness, and then all of a sudden all of these voices locked in. But you also had the key of each note, so they knew what to match it with. 150 years later, like, oh, that's A flat. Okay, let's match that with A flat. They then knew that they were getting the most accurate version of what they were able to pick up off of those paper recordings.
That's pretty nuts.
It's insane. They realized that a lot of these clips were being played too fast, and when they made those adjustments, a few things became clear. Now, here's a musical scale that was previously thought to be sung by a woman that they changed their mind about.
But again, when we slow the recording to its correct speed, the voice of the inventor conducting an experiment again emerges.
So they realized that pretty much all these recordings that they had were from Leon Scott himself, that he was basically just locked into a room and doing these experiments. And when you hear the adjusted Claire de la Lune, and I'm pretty sure I'm adding a couple of extra la-las, every time I say that, it's not a mysterious French woman from the 1800s, but it's in fact Leon Scott, and he's doing it so slow, methodically, that you could just see him hand cranking this thing, talking into this reverse cone, and watching the waveforms as they come out on the other side of the paper. So here's the final clip on that, and I think, yeah, this is just the adjusted clip. You see what I mean? Like, there's something about that tone where he's not singing to sing. He's like, he's watching something. You can tell that he's like, while slowly cranking away on that capturing device. So they knew that they had, once again, Leon's own voice, and they had to basically redo the story. And like, sorry, everyone, this isn't some mysterious hot trot vixen from 1800s France. But it's Leon Scott. It's the man himself, and history was forever changed. But I find these recordings to be haunting and eerie and fucking fascinating. By the way, this was 1860 in Paris. That's romantic enough, but considering that this was a year before the Civil War broke out in the United States, that's crazy. Like, we have pulled recordings from ash-covered paper that go back to when Lincoln was still alive and no one had been shot on the field at Gettysburg.
Yeah, that's nuts.
That's some old shit, man. It makes you wonder where we're going to be able to pull audio or even imagery from in the future as our technology continues to get more and more into the realm of science fucking fiction. But anywho, there you have it. For now, because this could change, we find the right piece of paper in the right drawer. But for now, Claire de la Lune, as sung by Leon Scott in 1860 in Paris, is the oldest known recording of the human voice.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, sadly, Leon never saw any of this glory or spoils in his own lifetime, of course. And he actually died fairly penniless, and his family could only afford to have him buried in an unmarked pauper's grave. And the location of that grave has been lost to time. So
that's crazy.
Eerie, huh? Kind of a sad ending, but vindicated many, many years later. Definitely a victory for his family these days.
Yeah.
All right. Well, should we get on to some news that might... oh, no. God. That's going
wow,
way.
You're really going back.
Really going back. News that might get Christopher fired is how it all started.
So I had a second quiz tonight for... it was... TV shows that people thought had the worst series finale of all time. It's like a top 100 list, and I thought I'd quiz you guys on that. Fan voted worst series finales of all time. And I'm going to let you guys go one at a time. I'm going to let each go 5 times. And this is how I'll rate it in a score.
Okay.
If you got the number 1, you'd get 100 points. If you got the number 2, you would get 99 points, and so on.
Gotcha. So when we guess 1, it's off the board for the others to guess. Gotcha.
That's correct, yeah. Okay.
And this is the worst, right? It's like
worst. Like people hated these series finales.
Do you have the opposite? Do you have the best?
I don't. That's a great. That would be a fun way to balance this.
Yeah.
I apologize.
I wonder if you just like use it backwards.
Yeah, sort of.
Okay, so the order you're going to start here will be Lyle, Ron, then John Mark. I chose that randomly from my brain. Congratulations.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Lyle. Gimme
Worst in history.
the worst.
I want to go with Game of Thrones, but like I don't want to be that guy. You know what I mean? Because it's roughly last year. You know,
Just do it if you want to say it. If you want to guess
TV's
it.
so out there.
Well, is that how you feel, or is that how you think people voted?
You're gonna hate me. I haven't even watched the fucking last season's Game of
Okay,
Thrones.
well, that's fair. I mean, that at least we know that's how you think people voted versus that's how you feel. Because there's 2 ways to go about this.
I know, but is it a popularity vote? Or is it personally how you feel? You know what I mean?
No,
like,
it's no.
TV
Of course,
show
it's
that
popular.
you just love so much, and then it fucking went in the shithole.
Yeah.
Shit, probably kind of goes.
I heard a lot of shit about Game of Thrones, no question. The whole last season, it seemed like people were disappointed. I don't know. I thought it was fine.
You know, it's probably not going to be on the books. This is one that really, God, it got on me really good. That I remembered. You know, because I'm not a huge TV fan. I got cable like 6 years ago.
Sure.
But there was a TV series that I used to love. You know, God, there's a couple of them actually. I think maybe we should have multiple.
We got 5 rounds, so you can whatever you don't get out the first one.
Oh, nice. I'm going to go with, and it bugs me because obviously the main character quit. It was the X-Files. When you had Mulder quit, and then they try to get a new Mulder, and then it was all it's terrible.
Yeah.
Well, Lyle,
And then they made a movie. They made a movie to make up for it.
Yeah.
Well, Lyle, I've got good news. X-Files is within the top 10.
Nice.
Number 8. And that's going to net you 92 points for your first snag there.
Wow, that's a lot of points.
I know.
Boom.
Okay,
Number 8
Ron,
gets
your turn,
98
buddy.
points. I feel like the one I hear most people
92 points. Sorry.
bashing is Dexter, which I thought Dexter was an okay ending. I could see why people had problems with it, but I'll go with Dexter.
Dexter is number 1 on the list. That's correct.
yeah.
Number 1.
It's crazy. They're way
complained
worse. Way worse.
Okay, so Ron wins.
Well, he gets 100 points,
Yeah,
but
we got 100,
you've got
but
5
we got-
rounds,
we
so
got
let's
5
see how many
rounds.
points you have at the end. John Mark.
I'm gonna go with Lost on my first go round.
That was my next one, where Sarah and I are watching it right now. By the way, if anyone can lose a game after getting the very first top answer, it's the Ronster. But yeah, the Lost was very, very polarizing. Now, John Mark, spoiler free, I don't think anyone else has watched that show, unless I'm wrong. Yeah, I'm right.
I've watched the first 2 seasons, but you know.
John Mark, were you a fan of the season or series finale?
I want to say that I could appreciate what they did.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't in the camp that was like, oh, fuck that, you know, like,
Yeah.
I feel like they maybe could have done something different, but I don't know. I kind of dug where they were going with it, you know? I don't know.
I did too. I think overall, yeah, I'm with you. I think I would give it like a 7 or an 8 at the
Sure,
most.
yeah.
I wouldn't say it was amazing. But
Not the worst thing ever to happen to a TV show, that's for sure.
no, but I'm guessing I would guess it's top 5. Where are we at with that, Chris?
Lost was 6th on the list,
damn.
getting you 94 points.
You know, I think people are feeling better about it as time goes by. I also think
Probably.
there's something to be said about watching, 6, 7 seasons? That's 7 years that you are following this thing. A lot of people now are discovering it on Hulu or Amazon or wherever, and they marathon it in, a couple of months. That's a big difference in commitment, and I think that makes a big difference in how forgiving you are with how it ends. Don't you think?
Probably. I think Game of Thrones people will get. I think they're going to calm down over time. Don't get me wrong. I could do a whole episode. I could speak about this ad nauseum, but
I gotta be honest. I don't really remember much about it, but I don't remember hating it. I remember being like, "Wait, that those people died? That's all they get? Is that a couple rocks fall on their heads?" Yeah.
Okay, Lyle, we're coming back to you, buddy.
I'm gonna go with Game of Thrones just because I know I've heard everything actually from it. You know, the ending of it. You know, it was kind of
I bet that's number 2.
Number 7.
Number 7.
Really?
Wow. Surprising.
7 on the list.
Wow, that's exciting. We still have 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Unexplored territory.
I'm gonna make a wild guess here. I don't think anyone's gonna get number 2, but it's real possible because I know that that show's ending stank. I think you'll get number 3. I think you'll get number 4. I think you might get number 9, and everything else is like, oh, okay, cool.
Makes sense.
Okay, so
100.
Lyle picked up another 93 points there. Ronster.
Oddly enough, I'm leaning towards Seinfeld. I remember people talking about Seinfeld, but I thought it was kind of the perfect ending for that show, so I'll go with Seinfeld.
Seinfeld is number 4.
Ooh,
That was going to be my next guess, too.
Nice.
Fuck.
Oh, interesting.
96 points in the bank, baby. Okay, Joe Mark.
I'm fucking trying to think of
Show endings.
show endings.
I know.
Yeah,
Like, they're not
right.
coming to me either.
there's just like so much.
Like, as soon as you say
it,
one, I'll be like, oh, yeah.
I'm trying to think. Well,
There's
one
so much.
that I know was pretty polarizing for people in the last decade or so. I don't know where it's going to be on the list. I'm sure it's on here. Was the Battlestar Galactica reboot?
Yeah. I still haven't gotten through that fucking thing.
Oh my God, that's wild to me because I thought it was so good.
I loved it.
It is good,
I
but it just there's
remember
like
reading that
5,000
some
episodes.
People thought it was
Yeah.
shitty. I don't know.
Yeah, it's not on the list.
Not on the list.
I don't see
Oh,
it.
Oh, wow,
anywhere
our first whiff. Ooh,
Wow.
that's going to cost you.
Swing and a miss.
anyone
Do I get
guesses.
to guess again?
Absolutely not. Oh, I lied to you. I did find it. I'm sorry. 81.
Okay.
Wow.
You're gonna get 19 points out of that.
Yeah, 100. That's a lot of shows.
Okay. Sorry, my scorekeeping is not great. 19 points. Okay, Lyle, take
I'm
another
gonna
spin,
go-
baby.
I'm going to go with a show that was really, really, really popular.
Okay.
And I think the only reason why people think it would suck is because it was over. And I'm going to go with Friends.
Friends. Okay, let me see.
I don't know that I ever saw that finale.
It's probably under Joey.
No one told you this show had to end sometime.
Friends, 54th on the list.
Yeah, not bad.
I'll give you quick math here. 46 points.
I gotta get back up in the
That is.
double digits.
Yeah, this is hard. It's hard just to remember the TV series in general, let alone
right?
I'm trying to think of something that just totally. God, you wouldn't guess Mad Men, or would you? God, that's the only one that's coming to me.
That's
Mad
the
Men.
question, huh?
Mad Men was a fucking brilliant ending. Oh God, I don't know if I want to waste a turn on Mad Men, but I bet it's on the list because people are stupid. I'll go with Mad Men.
Okay. You have to forgive me. I thought I was able to search this website of 100 things, but apparently it's nope. So I got to scroll. Let's see. Edit this out or put some good.
Will do.
Bum, bum,
Put some good copyright-free music on.
Oh wait, it's
It'll just be-
copyrighted. Well, you can't do that.
But you just mix it up. Turn a different beat. It's all good.
Turn
Mix it
the
up.
beat
What you want?
around. Congratulations, you just gave
We'll do the Mary Had a Little Lamb.
Gloria Gaynor. Yeah, right.
Mad Men. Badman is not on the list. I apologize.
Well, that's good and bad. I got the first whiff.
I thought from everything I heard, people seem to really like that ending. But I didn't watch the show. I've never seen Mad Men.
What?
I know. It's just I haven't seen.
Saving it for later.
Maybe.
Oh, God, one just came to me. Oh,
good. Hold on to it, baby. You got 2 more rounds. 2 more. What do you got for me, Joe Mark?
One came to me as well, but God damn it, I'm going to have to go with this one that also came to me before that.
Okay.
I think a classic ending that I think maybe a lot of people hated was Saint Elsewhere.
Oh, yeah.
Elsewhere. I'm not even familiar with this.
Old soap opera.
Elsewhere. I never watched that. Was that a hospital show?
Yeah.
Yeah. I keep wanting to do the Hill Street Blues song.
Please be on there. Please be on there. Please be on there.
No, I don't think it's on here, my friend. I'm not saying. Let me give it one more quick look. I'm going to do my due diligence. Say Elsewhere. I lied to you. 31st on the list.
Wow, that's pretty high for a fucking 40-year-old show. Whatever.
Yeah,
I feel like that was an 80s show, right?
Still not doing me too many favors up there on the
69 points. 69 points ain't bad, baby.
So I think what was up with that show is that, spoiler alert. At the end, it turns out that the whole show took place in the mind of an autistic child or some shit.
Oh, yeah, dude.
That's actually the same premise of this podcast.
Well, that's weird.
Pretty much.
Well, this whole thing takes place in an autistic child? Huh.
Should have wore your helmet before you rode your bike out.
I'm starting to have a different view on autism. I might have to donate. Instead of just lying that I donated.
Oh, my.
I feel like I definitely got a top fiver, unless Lyle gets it for me.
Lyle, you got one on your brain pipe?
I'm keeping it kind of socially and environmentally friendly here because I know we all kind of agree that it was a show that was very loved but never brought back to life. And that was a sci-fi little thing called Firefly.
Oh, man.
Yeah, was that technically, that couldn't really be considered a finale, though, right? It was just, it got canceled. Like, they didn't end it.
That's what I'm going to find out here. I don't see it in the top 40 yet. But
people could still pick that answer.
Yeah, they absolutely could. And, I think a lot of people have a bad taste in their mouth about that. But I think it was
crazy that they still haven't done it. Like, in this day and age when people are making every fucking thing, there's a new Karate Kid series on fucking YouTube. If the people involved with Firefly really wanted to do it, they would have done it by now. It's time to let it go, people.
100% agree with you. I think Joss Whedon has a bad taste in his mouth, and I don't think he'll ever go back to that world.
Well, how can he live up to anything at this point?
Yeah, it's not on the list.
I was going to say it's like Half-Life. They actually made a Half-Life 3, but it's in VR. So unless you got an Oculus Rift, you can't play it.
Not really Half-Life 3.
Mm-hmm.
It's Alex. It's not Half-Life 3.
So it is.
It's not.
Got facehuggers and everything.
Ronster, what do you got?
True Blood.
Ooh,
that whole show went fucking wonky.
That's the one that was in my head. I couldn't remember.
God, I got another one.
Okay, hold on to it. Well, True Blood is number 9 on the list. Not the top 10.
Not bad.
I'm going to get you 91 points there, buddy.
God, I can't believe it took me this long to think of the other one.
John Mark.
All these are going to be obvious once we say them.
Well, I'm trying to think. I feel like most of the ones that are going to be in the top 20 are going to be ones from the most recent days of easy internet outrage.
I think so too.
You'd be one of them. Number 2. Excuse me, number 3 is not.
I figured there's probably a couple on there that are older, but I try to think of fucking shows that even had finales that I'm aware of. That
now you got me thinking about dramas.
Man, I've got 2 in my mind, and for some reason I want to say MASH.
No, that was actually the best. I think it was number 1 rated finale.
That was the most watched TV show
it was most
for
watched,
like 20 years.
Mean it was the most loved.
Yeah,
I'm going to go ahead and check. I'm going to check. I'll tell you right now, I'm well past 40 and I don't see it.
I think that is often considered to be one of the greatest series finales of all time. But doesn't mean it ain't on the list.
Yeah. Well, you might be catching it from that. That's what it was.
Yeah. I don't remember because I don't know if I ever. I don't know if I ever watched it.
There's no MASH. So I'm sorry, sir.
No MASH.
Yep.
Well, I'm not winning this game.
Hey, you don't know. We all have one more round.
You don't know.
Come on back, baby. What you got?
Oh, John Mark's got me all flustered up in this 80s fucking 90s fucking.
I bet he does. I bet he.
Stew of fucking drama, and I'm gonna
You're
go.
just sweating over there, aren't you, big boy?
Ooh, I am, and it's gonna be. I can't even believe I'm fucking saying it, but Melrose Place.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Again, let me give it a good scroll.
Did that have a finale? I feel like that doesn't deserve a finale. We don't get a Firefly closure, but we had.
That's the thing is I'm thinking of all these old shows, and I'm like, wait, they didn't even have a finale. Probably it was just like, oh, we're shooting out episodes, you know?
Yeah.
We're closing the doors, kids.
902. Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
You can't say 90210, but it's way down on the list. 90210 is on there, but I do not see a Melrose Place. I'm sorry, sir.
Two efforts. Damn, that's a window.
I got one that has to be in the top 10, if not the top 5. Everyone was talking about this fucking ending. I think it's fucking brilliant. And that was the Sopranos.
Okay. Interestingly enough, not in the top 10. Let me scroll.
That's surprising.
Oh, 16.
Maybe people have, gone back and watched them shits. Again, probably marathoning it and and watched it again and is like, oh my God, I get it now.
I love that ending.
Yeah, it's great.
16th on the list, buddy. That's going to get you 84 more points.
Okay. Oh, I'm dying to know this. The rest of the top 5.
I'll read the top 10 or 20 here, maybe, because I can go
Give
fast.
me one more round. I think we should give one more round.
I can give you one more round, baby. Joe Mark.
Wait, who would win if we stopped now? Oh, Breaking Bad. Yeah, good one.
God, I thought that was a great ending. Okay, let me look. Not in the top 10.
I think so too, but I think John Mark makes a good point. Like in the age of we have everything now, we're whinier. And we'll just be like, I wanted this to happen.
Yep.
So I could see people shitting on.
I feel like I remember hearing some backlash about that finale. But
although they didn't with Mad Men. That was about the same era.
Maybe it wasn't enough to be on the list of 100.
Yeah.
Not on the list. I'm a little surprised, frankly, too, because while I loved Breaking Bad, I did hear a lot of flack about that ending.
Yeah.
Okay. So, to one more round or to not? I won't tell you the scores now.
Well, if we're going to do news quiz, why don't we go ahead and...
Oh, come on.
All right, one more round.
There's one I've been dying to say that.
All right, everyone get your last one ready.
God, I just don't even know.
Okay.
Yeah, it probably is not even on the list, but like in the whole rendition of the X-Files, there was a TV show in the 90s which was very, very popular, filmed in Washington. I never watched it until it's like fucking 4 years ago, I think.
Twin Peaks.
But it had a weird ending to it. I don't think a lot of people really enjoyed, and that would be Twin Peaks.
Well, that's another one that I don't think it didn't really have a proper ending, but people definitely are polarized about Twin Peaks. They might just have put that on the list just because they were pissed at that third season.
That's right.
Came out recently.
76th on the list.
Huh?
Boom.
That's funny.
That wasn't my mind too to say Twin Peaks, but I forgot.
But see, it's like we don't know that the show's even done at this point.
Right.
That's kind of an odd one.
Ronster, you got another one?
Yeah, I was trying to think of comedies because I know comedies are, we talked about MASH, although that was more of a dramedy. But I remember the original Roseanne being pretty controversial. My family was up in arms about it. I can't think of anything else beyond that.
Man, I'm so glad you said that. It's number 3 on the list.
Oh, wow, that's surprising.
Yeah. 97 points for that one, man.
Well, that was a huge, huge show, though.
Nice one.
That was, and again, going back to John Mark's point, that was pre-internet rage. So it's like I think people were super, super into, because John, what was his name? Fucking John
Goodman.
John Goodman's character. Why am I spacing his
Was he killed
character's
off in that? I can't remember.
Yeah, he had a heart attack. I don't know if that was in the actual finale, but that was in the last season. Yeah. Dan died, and then they brought him back in the reboot. And then they killed off Roseanne because she said something, racist or
something to that effect.
Something on Twitter.
Okay, John Mark, you want to make one more lightning strike here, baby?
Let's see.
I feel pretty good about this game,
yeah, I'm just...
Unless John Mark gets one of these.
I'm just gonna go out on a limb and say Frasier.
Frasier.
Keeping with the comedy tip.
I only watched a few episodes of that show, but it was fucking hilarious.
I love that
I don't know
show.
why I didn't watch more. Every time I watched it, it was like, God, it reminded me of like Faulty Towers or something. It had that kind of
Kinda.
uber dry humor.
I feel we're gonna beat ourselves up when we hear the top 10.
Some of them for
Maybe,
sure,
yeah.
but let's see. I'm not seeing Frasier. I'm at 91.
I'm just having a hard time digging in the old memory banks about TV shows.
No, I
me
totally
too.
understand.
It's a
Okay,
little-
sorry, John Mark. No points on that one.
Wah,
Let me add up your scores real fast. Let you know who won.
Oh, it's wrong.
And
I think it's me.
I tell you what, it's 8. Let's see. How
Ron.
about I save my news quiz for next week, and I'll just round up the top 20. We can chat about it.
Yeah, let's do
that
it.
sounds good because we're at an hour and 40 at this point.
We can have a different kind of quiz every once in a while.
I love
I'll
it.
do a new promo.
Yes. No, you don't want to do that.
No. Although I do have more time on my hands these days.
A lot of fucking numbers here. Sorry. Should make this easier.
Yeah, I was surprised that you went that route, although it makes sense, I guess, but that's a lot
You
of
beat
numbers
Ron.
to add.
Yeah, well, I was like, well, how do I rate this between 1 and 100? Like, if I go,
Yeah, I don't know how I would have done it better.
lots of numbers.
Halfway through adding up Lyles.
Words.
You guys hear any good jokes lately? I got one for you.
Words.
Okay. Did you hear the one? Oh my God, Ron, your score is monster. I can tell you right now, Ron won. Hold on, let me do the last calculation. Okay, did you hear the one about the pirate that walked into the doctor's office with the steering wheel stuck to his crotch? And the doctor was like, "Oh my God, does that hurt?" And the pirate was like, "Aye, it's driving me nuts."
Driving me nuts.
I did hear that,
no.
actually, because there's a guy, the taxi driver, who goes by Taxi Man that used to come into open mics and do semi-offensive jokes, but one of them was that one.
I have never been able to remember jokes. That's like, I cannot remember jokes for the fucking life of me. I'll hear it. I'll be like, I'm going to remember that one. That one's great. And just, nope.
Yeah.
All right, here, I'm gonna hit you with the scores here. John Mark, you missed a few at the end, a couple at the end,
Oh, boy.
and one of yours was kind of a rando down at the bottom, only worth 19 points. You're at the bottom with $1.33.
Sounds impressive.
Lyle did pretty good. He had 2 in the top 10 for 255 points.
Oh, Jesus.
But the Ronster pulled his magnum dick out and really put on a clinic here, getting the number 1 answer, the number 3 answer, the number 4 answer. He pulled up 468 points.
Oh, shit.
Faith
son.
and Bigora.
Shaka laka.
Well, at least it's during a quiz that is impressive because it's certainly academia-based. Ladies? I'm not a tube junkie.
Let's go
Take
to the
what I
top
can
20.
get.
I'll count them down from top 20 here.
All right.
20, The Secret Life of the American Teenager. I can't believe you guys didn't get that.
That was going to be
terrible.
my next one. Yeah, a lot of these
19.
will probably be like never heard of
Yeah.
it.
Well, actually, I think you'll know most of them. 19, Ghost Whisperer.
No.
Yeah.
Is that with
People were really dissatisfied with how that ended, apparently.
wasn't
We
that with,
felt that he was talking too loudly.
Love
He wasn't in keeping with
You've never
brand.
seen an episode of Ghost Whisperer, and you don't even know who's in it, do you?
No.
Oh,
Is it
Jennifer Love Hewitt.
Yeah. God,
At 18, Castle.
never heard of it.
I never heard of that.
Oh, yeah.
Was it
Nathan Fillion's show. Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
At 17, My Name is Earl.
Oh, I forgot about that.
I don't remember the finale of that,
I don't
but I
either.
remember liking that show a lot.
Yeah, the first
Yeah.
season was pretty fun. I think it kind of lost its way quickly, is
Yeah.
probably what people remember. But I don't remember the finale either.
I'd never
At 16, which was guest The Sopranos.
heard- No.
Yeah.
At 15, Merlin. I never saw Merlin.
What the fuck?
Merlin, the
Yeah.
miniseries?
Is it like a Netflix?
That was a TV show. I don't know anything about it.
Yeah.
Is that like the Disney Channel show?
There's a pretty decent Merlin miniseries in the late 90s.
At 14, Quantum Leap.
Never watched it.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
that
okay.
was,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
was kind of a cool show.
Yeah, I loved Quantum Leap. It was a little
It was
young.
like
for
Murder,
it.
She Wrote mixed with
Time travel.
Yeah, Back to the Future.
Yeah. At 13, a show I'd never seen called Jericho.
Oh yeah, no, oh yeah, totally. That
Oh, that was
Oh,
another. That was another.
started out pretty strong, and then it just
Yeah.
went to shit.
But then it went away. It was a lot
Sure.
like
Yeah.
Firefly, where it just got canceled, and then there was outrage, and I think they brought it back, and everyone was like, "You brought it back for this." I never saw an episode, but I feel like that's the story.
it started out pretty good, and then it just was like,
Well,
At 12, Star Trek Enterprise.
Star Trek
Okay.
Enterprise.
Okay.
Never.
you know, I
never saw
was
that.
thinking maybe there's a Star Trek in here somewhere, but
I know
Yeah.
there wasn't a finale for the original series. Was there a finale for? I'm only recently kind of dabbling in the
Star Trek.
Next Generation.
Oh my
And
God.
I hate it. I don't know what bugged me about it
Is it doing
When
it for you now?
when it came out. Yeah, there's a whole like cadence and humor to it that I wasn't picking up on when I was younger.
Yeah.
It just seems soap opery, and I didn't like the look. I didn't like the colors. I was such a huge original series fan that I thought
I
it
get
just
it.
looked new and stupid. You know what I mean? Like,
That was, I mean,
didn't
that
like
was the Star Trek I grew up on. So
yeah, a lot of people I know, they feel that way. Even if they do like the original series, they went back and discovered it, which must have been a disorienting experience.
I used to eagerly await the next episode of the Next Generation. I go to my friend's house, and he had satellite, so we just like sit there, fuck
Oh
around,
my
wait for
God.
the feed to come on.
I think part of it might be there was like 2 channels that we got because we were antenna kids. We didn't have fancy schmancy cable. And all that was ever on was like Star Trek The Next Generation. I feel like they syndicated it immediately, and it was just like always on.
Yeah,
So maybe that association. But yeah, I have been watching them on Netflix, and they're great, especially for being from that era.
Okay, number 11, Prison Break. Anyone ever watch that? I didn't watch it.
No, my
I
parents
think
did.
I might have accidentally seen 1 or 2 episodes, but
Hmm.
Yeah,
meh.
me.
Number
But to
10.
me, that's like the fucking Fast and Furious of TV shows or some shit.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, things are getting a little wonky. It was about the same time Lost was on too, I think.
Yeah. At number 10, 2.5 Men.
Yeah, another. I never
That
thought
the
that
one
was
where
funny.
They just killed off Charlie Sheen and brought Ashton Kutcher in. It was just
Oh, did he?
See, that's
Yeah.
what I was trying to think of. I was like, what else? What other shows did?
It was very
get killed off
controversial.
and they brought someone else in. Or
Yeah.
Does Charlie Sheen have AIDS?
That's
He did. And
He
I
did?
think that it's, well, you know how they can get it to a point where it's not
Basically
something that's
not
even
something.
spreadable. Yeah.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember. Like, I think it's come up on some of the old podcasts that Sarah was
Yeah.
listening to, and it's like,
Well,
does he have AIDS?
to
I
be
don't
more
Man, did you
precise,
just...
he would
did
have
you-
HIV.
Oh,
Not
yeah.
AIDS.
Positive?
AIDS is-
Yeah.
Are
Yeah.
you positive? Are you Charlie
Oh, no.
positive?
That's exactly the joke that Lau made on the episode. It's like 5 years
You've
ago.
got to play that clip.
I gotta find it. Yeah.
Yeah, I got to play it now. That's a stinger.
Because it'll be easy to do because I just sent her a list of the archived one. Edit. It took too long to find it. Use your imagination. That's fucking funny. Another
Oh my
hour of
God.
editing, it'll be worth it.
I mean, we're riffing on Lyle right now, but I can't tell you how many times I've gone back and listened
We
to
all do
like
it.
a podcast we recorded a year ago or something,
Mm-hmm.
and I start making the same jokes out loud that I'm making right there on the fucking mic,
Yeah.
along with myself.
Me
Without
too.
it's so stupid.
laughing at you.
Yeah, it's dumb. Okay, number 9. Somebody got True Blood already. We'll move on to number 8. I think who got True Blood?
I did.
Ron.
Uh-huh. And number 8 was X-Files. I think Lyle got that one,
Yeah.
as well as number 7, Game of Thrones. Lost. I think Ron got that.
John Mark got that.
Oh, John Mark.
That was my one.
Okay, that was your good one.
Yeah.
Number 5, Heroes.
Oh yeah,
I
I
never
forgot
watched
about
that.
that show.
You know what else
don't-
I've never watched one single episode of, and it just seems to be like at season 38 now? Supernatural.
Oh.
that's a show.
Yeah, that was
I
in there
watched,
too.
I
for
watched
sure.
the pilot or the first episode. I'm like, I don't know.
I think I watched the first couple, but it just seems like, man, there's like 10 seasons of this shit. Do I really need to go down that road?
Yeah,
I really, really like the cinematography in it. It's really fucking shot well. But yeah, I mean, they die like 5 fucking times.
yeah. Spoilers. I'll be like at Death 4, and it's like, this won't happen again. Wait, Lyle ruined it.
They
It will
couldn't
happen one more time.
Number 4 was Seinfeld. I believe Ron got that.
Do you remember how that ended? Like they're all in jail or something.
Yeah, stupid. I mean, the whole show's stupid.
That's kind of what they all deserve. They're all terrible people. Like there's no good person in that show.
Number
But that's
3
perfect.
was Roseanne. Ronster got that.
Yeah.
Number 2 was the one that nobody got that I thought was an interesting choice. Now, to be
Can
fair, I
we do
love this show.
before you say it?
Yeah.
Do you think it's even worth going one more round? I mean, just to see if we could guess it, or do you think it's
For
like
funsies.
two out of?
For funsies, and I'm gonna give you a clue.
Is this a
Yeah,
show
give
that
us a
will be like,
clue.
oh, I know that show, or is it just too obscure?
Yeah, everyone knows the show.
Okay.
I think. Super popular, maybe 15 years ago.
Okay.
Let's
Let's go. Let's stick with our order. Lau, you get one guess.
How long ago was 15 years ago?
It's tough to do that. Isn't that crazy that we were
2004?
still in the 2000s 15 years ago, well into the
like
2000s?
2008, maybe I would say 2007.
That does help.
You know, I did have kind of a stroke.
They had. I'm gonna tell you. I'm gonna give you another hint here. 9 seasons.
Oh shit!
Yikes! This is just a guess. It's probably on the list, but like, Mad About You.
No, it's a great guess, but that's not it.
What about you? What was going on then? That's way too late for like Home Improvement or one of those type of shows. God, 9 years? Oh, Cheers. No, not in 2000. No. All right,
I'm
well,
gonna let you
there was
slip
my
on
guess.
that one. Cheers. No, okay. If you
It's
want,
probably
to.
on there, but it was ended in the 80s. I'm pretty sure.
9 fucking years is what's throwing me.
9 seasons, and it was probably. I'm just guessing. I'm trying to think where I was in life. I was still working at the Kids Up, so it was before I moved to Wenatchee.
Okay.
And it was at one of probably the height of its popularity at that point.
Yeah.
Huh. Can you give us one more clue? Drama, comedy?
It's a comedy, a multi-camera comedy, I would say, or a single camera comedy. So
Oh,
there's
for
like
fuck's
still a.
sake.
Oh god.
I just cannot.
Do you know what it is? Did it come to you?
Do you want to take a guess, John Mark?
No, I'm brain dead, dude.
It's got to be The Office.
It's not The Office.
Really?
It's I'm gonna give you another clue, and if anyone knows it, just shout it out. The show is pretty legend. Wait for it.
Oh, yeah.
Dairy.
Fuck. I know what it is.
Dairy?
Yeah.
Legend.
Milk.
Wait for it. Dairy.
I fucking still drawing a blank, man.
There's a redhead. It's Neil Patrick, fucking whatever his name is.
How I Met Your
Oh, for
Mother?
fuck's sake.
How I Met Your Mother. Yep.
How I
I
Met
that's
never
Your
exactly-
watched that
Nice.
show.
Yeah.
I never
Number 2.
watched that show.
It's
Yeah,
really good.
I never
I
did.
love that show.
It wasn't that bad.
It felt like my generation's Friends when I watched that show. I can't really describe it other than that. I never finished it though because I heard the ending was bad. I didn't watch the last season. Well, good job, guys.
Yeah.
Ronster, you just dominated. I guess I need to do more ranker lists.
That was fun.
Yeah, it was fun.
Find
It was a
something
nice,
else like that we might not know.
Nice change.
Okay.
Nice change of pace.
Cool, man. I'll throw those into the rotation.
All right. Sounds good to me. And with that, why don't we get our asses on out of here? If you enjoy the show, please leave us some feedback in the form of an email. You can send that to, let's go with radarstationart.gmail.com for now, or at gmail.com for now. I'll get one set up specifically for the podcast, but haven't yet. Everything takes forever. So let's go with that. Or if you listen to us using any of these fancy smancy apps, take 5 minutes to give us a kindly review. We just got our first 2-star review today, which
Yes.
not
Did
bad,
you?
not bad at all. They didn't
Can you
leave.
read it?
They didn't leave a review. They just gave us 2 stars.
Oh,
Didn't even take
No
the time.
supporting
to review.
documentation.
Yeah, what are you gonna do?
I love it.
They
I love
can't
that
all
they
be
were
5
like-
stars, or it doesn't seem legit.
I love that it's not 1 though. It's like, I'm
Yeah.
gonna give him 2.
the 2 or 3 stars are more painful than the 1. Because the
Well,
one-
we went what? How many 1 stars did we have for Tales from the Space Pod? Like one,
like 2, 1 or 2. Yeah,
That's pretty impressive for like
we had
9
like
years.
70 reviews, I think. Maybe not that many. It was a lot. I mean, it was a chunk. But yeah, it was almost all positive. But the ones that were like 3 stars, and was like, mostly interesting topics, but the host thinks he's funnier than he is.
Remember that?
Promise you, I don't.
They swear too much.
The best one was that guy was like,
Unfunny Queens.
don't bother unless you like listening to a bunch of 12-year-old unfunny queens or something.
Yes.
Like, I'll have you know that we are Moderately funny 12-year-old queens. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. That's good shit. But anyway, and if you want to support the show financially, you can do that at patreon.com/talesfromthespacepod. And we do appreciate your support, but mostly just keep on tuning in. Numbers are growing, not much, but we've decided that this is our lot in life, and we're happy with it. We'll record you a podcast when we can, and we'll all be happy. But anywho, tune in next week. We will talk about 9/11. What a story that's going to be.
It's crazy.
See y'all.
Night, guys.
Bye.
Have a week. As Kevin Smith, I think, used to say. Yeah? Have a week. Night.
It's the Mootrix.